Welcome back to the second hour of the Robert Davi Show. I am Brian Oxman sitting in for Robert Davi, and I would like to have on this show one of my really very good friends. He is just so good. He is so informed. It is David Fischer. He is the CEO of Landmark Capital, and I like to turn to him whenever there is an economic issue. And oh boy, David, do we got economic issues. I guess we got trouble right here in River City. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. If we don't take care of our debt, it's going to take care of us in a bad way. Yeah, we have trouble, obviously. We're ignoring a lot of the major fundamentals. But happy 4th of July. We have a free country. But
happy 4th of July. Oh, my goodness. Freedom ain't free. And what you have is you got the Donald going over to the G20 summit. Boy, are there going to be some firecrackers and fireworks over there. What do you see happening?
Well, this is the G20. It's the world's biggest countries' economies coming together, representing 85% of the total global gross domestic products. And it's being housed in Germany, in Hamburg, the second largest city. And
it sounds like a slumber. It's a slumber party to me. It's a convocation. What are they going to do? A sleepover?
Some people wish they would go to sleep. Others are saying, I wish they'd really talk about the important things. But they're supposed to be talking about global warming and how we all can work together, have a kumbaya, free trade, the management of forced mass global migration. In other words, what are we going to do with immigration? Those are the themes of the G20, but I think the big theme is going to be how well President Trump is going to get along with Angela Merkel, because she is a big climate, world climate, global warming advocate, and President Trump is not. And this is also going to be very controversial because this is the first time Trump and Putin we're going to meet face to face, which is going to be highly intense and scrutinized.
I mean, can these people get along, or is it as Rodney King said, no, we can't get along?
Well, Angela Merkel and Trump haven't got along very well. In fact, she is actually addressed last week in a speech to Parliament saying that she promises to fight free trade and press on with a multilateral efforts to combat climate change at the summit, challenging the concept of America First that President Trump laid out. And just keep in mind, just not long ago, a couple months ago, we had the G7 in Italy where President Trump announced he's withdrawing from the, the Paris Climate Accord, which sent waves to the European communities and countries. This is on the coattails. This is on a larger platform. That's the G7. This is the G20. So it's going to be very controversial. Hopefully they're not going to be riots. They're expecting rioting. Rioters are already calling this Hell Week. So it's going to be very highly controversial. It happens on the 7th and 8th of July, Friday and Saturday. Next Monday, we'll talk about what happened as a result of that. It'll be interesting.
I mean, when we say Hell Week, it takes us back to the college days of the raising and the razzing and really the abusing of people. Is the economy going to be abused? I mean, Donald Trump is going there to say, no, you ain't doing that to me. But what's the abuse that we can expect to see coming out of this G20 conference?
Well, they're going to try and isolate President Trump. They want to bring him in line. This is the goal, underlying goal. They're trying to get President Trump on board with the rest of the world. That's what part of the G20 is. In the past, America has kind of taken the forefront and led the movement of the G20. Now we have the president who's going against the main principles of the G20. So this is a very historical event that's totally different. That's why they're saying there could be a massive clash of the titans, but also a clash of the people that are actually there to cause rioting. So it'll be interesting. Who knows what will actually happen? They should be talking about the bigger problem, which is what we were forewarned a month ago by the IMF and the Bank of International Settlement. They should be talking about, debt, but they're talking about other things.
Oh, the debt is so important, and I do want to ask you about debt. When people want to call you and ask you about what this economic circumstance means, what the uncertainty is, David, how do they get a hold of you?
They can call us, Brian, at 855-747-5947, or they can go to our website at landmarkgold.com.
You're talking about the debt, and a lot of countries are just racked with the debt. It goes from Italy, which is having its terrible, terrible problems, to Illinois, which can't seem to get its act together and is facing a downgrading of its ratings to junk bond status. Why is the world so just overwhelmed with this debt crisis?
Well, let's put it into perspective. You and I don't control the debt, nor do we have a way of getting it under management. But central bankers do. And if you look at 2007, that was what they called the debt bubble. It was commonly referred to that. And the debt back then, Brian, was $149 trillion in global debt. That's a lot of money. Here we
it's
are
uncountable.
10 years later. 10 years later, we have another $68 trillion added to that debt bubble at $217 trillion globally. So what the central banks have done, they create a boom and bust environment that the next bust is larger than the previous one, and the boom will happen as a result of the mopping up of the bust. So this is the unfortunate movement that now the central bankers have moved towards. This is how they create economic development. But, you can never get out of debt by creating more debt. And if you look at the debt in relationship to the GDP, the gross domestic product, it was in 2007 276%. In other words, the debt was 276% of our gross domestic product. Today it's 327%, which tells us our debt's getting bigger and we can't manage it less effectively.
My.
This was all done in a low interest rate environment. Now interest rates are on the rise, so we're going to have some problems.
I want to talk to you about the management of that debt. Can you stay with us for another segment?
Absolutely.
David Fischer, he is the CEO of Landmark Capital. You can get a hold of David at 855-747-5947. That's 855-747-5947. It's at landmarkgold.com. One of the most interesting guys who I get to talk to, David Fischer, CEO of Landmark Capital. Here on the Robert Davi program, I'm Brian Oxman sitting in for Robert. I want you to stay with us. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back with the Robert Davi Show. I'm Brian Oxman sitting in for Robert Davi. We're talking to David Fischer. He is the CEO of Landmark Capital. You can get a hold of David at 855-747-5947. That's 855-747-5947. Go to his website, landmarkgold.com. And David, we were talking about debt, a terrible, unmanageable thing. And what you have Ron Paul, who's a former congressman. He is the father of Senator Rand Paul. And so Ron Paul, Daddy, says that you're going to have a stock market that plummets 25% and gold is going to soar 50%, he says. Now, that's Mr. Doom and Gloom, but I guess there is a bright spot there. What do you think?
Well, it would be a bright spot for the gold industry if gold went up 50%. He said in his exact quote that he wouldn't be surprised if stocks plummeted 25% and gold soared 50% by October. I would be surprised at that. And I'm not. Ron Paul has always been an advocate of managing debt and an advocate of gold, and from the standpoint that our currency should be backed by gold. So he doesn't like the fiat currency, but the story behind the story is Ron Paul just recently was partnered with another gold company. So people say, "Oh, I'm surprised he's saying this thing." Well, he's coming out and saying it because he's being paid for the endorsement of gold.
Oh my goodness!
So thank you, Brian, that you don't ever say that gold's going to soar 50% and stocks are going to plummet by 25%. I know Robert's never said that. I've never been with a talk show host that say that. I've never said that, and you're not going to hear me say that. And I've been doing this for almost 25 years, coming up in August.
It's looking at a crystal ball.
Yeah, I do say this. Stocks are overvalued. Gold is undervalued. And there are bubbles being formed in our debt that will cause the stock market at some point in time to correct. Keep in mind, when the stock market corrected in 2008, gold went up 72%. So that's about a half again as much as Ron Paul is saying, but it was a huge crisis. We could have a bigger crisis, but it won't be ignited by the same elements that before, which was led by the housing industry. This time is going to be led by central bank debt and government debt. But I don't know. I don't like to go on the record. I'm certainly not endorsing what he's saying, that gold is going to go up 50%. I think that's very, very aggressive. It would be good for my clients, but I think that's too aggressive and far-fetched from reality. I think I'd like more of the normal 15 to 30% movement. In the history of doing this, there's only been one time out of 24 years, we've had a 50% or greater uptick in gold in a year, and that was 2008. We've had some 30%, some 35%, but the normal is about 15 to 22%.
What you do warn about is the management of this huge debt crisis, which is worldwide, and you say that there is a coming bail-in, and bail-in is a spooky word. It bothers a lot of people. Tell me what it is and why it's such a difficult problem.
Well, this is something that we could have nowadays, because before we didn't have a law that changed the legal ownership of our money, but this was taken on the coattails of what 9 other countries already did and implemented in their country, that when they, in the last 5 years, that is, so they went into their citizens' bank accounts or citizens' retirement and seized a portion of their money and gave back in return to those citizens either a bank note or a government bond. It was called a bail-in. So they did it because they couldn't get it bailed out by any country. So America is much bigger than all the other countries of the world. There's nobody coming to our rescue, and this is why we've set up this law that changes the legal ownership. So the next time around we have a major downturn, the government now is allowed to go into its citizens' bank accounts and retirements to shore up the problem of the debt and bailing out financial institutions, because the government this time doesn't have the money to do that. They did it before, and so we advocate that you protect yourself. Take some money and diversify. The stock market, when it went down 2008, gold went up 72%, like I was sharing, Brian, the first year, and it went on a multi-year run. So gold is a great investment. It's moving almost as much as the Dow is this year, so far year to date. But this also protects you that they can't seize your money since you're in physical gold and silver, and you can roll over your IRA or 401k now into physical gold and take possession of it without a tax liability.
You have a lot of literature on this and information for people to get on the changing directions and changing times, which is one of the neat things which I've read that you have. Where do people go to get that?
They can call our company at 855-747-5947 or go to our website at landmarkgold.com.
You are one of the people who talks a lot about the Dodd-Frank bill. And just a couple weeks ago, the Congress did what they are saying is a repeal of Dodd-Frank. The Senate is now considering it. Where do you see that going?
Well, they're going to be in recess probably till the first week in September. At least they're not going to have enough time to deal with that portion of this. They're going to have a few more days here. So I don't see it being picked up until probably the first or second week in September, if it gets picked up at all. In that short period of time, it might be picked up in October, because there's going to be a bigger fish to fry, and that is the government's going to run out of money. We're going to have a debt ceiling increase that they're going to have to deal with. So that's going to be the bigger problem. They're also going to be talking about the health care bill. So those are all taking more important front seats. I don't think it's going to pass the Senate, because they're saying it's going to be dead on arrival. There's a lot of flawed items in this bill called the Financial Choice Act. The biggest problem is it doesn't fix the problems of 2008.
It is amazing. David, it is a pleasure to talk to you, one of the best people I know of to talk about our economic system. David Fischer, CEO of Landmark Capital. You can get a hold of David, 855-747-5947. That's 855-747-5947, or go to his website, landmarkgold.com. That's landmarkgold.com.